we have, if you haven't used a Zoom Q&A before or Zoom webinar before, the Q&A box down there, you can put your questions in there and even ask them anonymously if you want to stay anonymous about the subject and the topic we're going over today. But before we get started, my name is Andrew Thomas. I'm the Director of Ticketing Professionals Conference, and I'm joined today by 3 other great people on this webinar. So I'll hand over to Ben to introduce himself.
Ben, you're on mute.
Off to a cracking start. Hi, I'm Ben Jeffries, and before you were that Oliver Mantell has aged terribly, who was supposed to be and lost his hair. I should explain that I'm stepping in to fill a lot of his shoes today as he's not feeling very well. So I'm Ben Jeffries. I work with Ollie at the Audience Agency, where I lead on operations in Scotland. And my qualifications as a substitute for Ollie are that I attended his talk in the Ticketing Professionals Conference in March in Manchester, and I asked him lots of annoying questions then. So he's asked me to step in today and do that again. And I'll hand over to Libby to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Ben. Hi, everyone. I'm Libby Papakiriakou. I'm a senior consultant at Baker Richards. We got involved because my colleague David, we'll see in a moment, was part of the initial discussion about this topic, and we've been talking about it on our side and just how interesting it is. And I really enjoyed being part of the session up in Manchester a few months ago now, and it's been a really nice experience. So we're glad to be back here doing it again, and I'll pass over to Kirk.
Thanks, Libby. So I am the one with the American accent. Hello, my name is Kirk Mortensen. I'm head of product at True Tickets, and just excited to be with you all today and talk about shadow audiences. Talk about knowing the people sitting in your audience.
Thanks, everyone. So Ben, are you going to kick us off now with setting the scene on how this whole thing came to be?
Certainly, yes. So today we're going to be talking about shadow audiences, which sounds like a group of sleeper agents in a Netflix thriller, but only marginally less exciting. What we're actually talking about are the people who attend our events but are not captured in our databases. So, and I should say that the purpose today is not to particularly convince you of anything, but to raise a question that we found interesting and explore that topic together. So as Andrew was saying, do add questions as we go into the Q&A button, and we'll come to them in the end. Hopefully it raises some questions, and we'd like to hear them. It certainly raised questions for Ollie. So if we advance the slide, the way this all began, this question really started when Ollie, who's a cultural maven, but also a man of the people, went to the football and his 2 worlds collided. In the UK, taking someone to the football requires you to allocate each seat of a ticket to a named account holder. And this was introduced, I think, to better police sort of violence in football, hooliganism, but it's now sort of routinely used to build customer data, provide loyalty points, etc. And this is something that does not seem to happen in the arts, where by and large we accept that we only collect details for the lead booker. So Oliver took to LinkedIn, where he posted his wonderings about this and how it might translate to the cultural sector, specifically asking sort of these wonderings and encouraging people to give reflections. And he was pretty excited when this absolutely blew up. I mean, in the context of LinkedIn posts about cultural ticketing, 43 comments is kind of Kardashian levels of engagement and fully justifies the use of these 4 yellow arrows. So to complete the origin story of this conversation, these responses poured in with thoughts on if this data gap, these shadow audiences, were important to know about, and if so, why? If we had the cultural permission to do this, and football has the behavior issues that make the data request understandable to ticket buyers, you know why you're asking for who else is coming with you, but what would our excuse be in the cultural world? How useful is this information, and how could and could not it be used to add insight, promote secondary spend, add user value, or build new relationships? And then there were thoughts on whether the added friction created for customers by collecting all this data was worth it. It was not a popular move when it was introduced for football fans. Would it tell us anything new or be actionable? And finally, I think there were thoughts on how it could be done, which systems do and don't support adding individuals to SEACH GDPR concerns, and what tools were being used to do this now. So anyway, clearly this was something we thought we should talk about, and so we did at the Ticketing Professional Conference, and now we're bringing some of those questions and hopefully some new questions and some more answers to you, a wider audience. And we're relying on you to ask some more questions about your experience and share your experiences and insights that you have. So as I say, do add to the Q&A, and I look forward to talking this through with you further at the end of the session. But with that, I will hand you over to Libby with the first big question.
Thank you. So my kind of role in this presentation and in the thinking when we were kind of creating it was sort of slightly resident skeptic, in that I'm a bit of a Luddite, or I can be, and also having worked in box offices myself, I could sort of visualize a little bit of those barriers, and was a little bit concerned about that. But the process of kind of talking and chewing over these issues and learning about some of the data that we're going to present in the presentation, I think there's obviously a balance to be struck about what's useful for us as arts organisations, and what's a lot to ask or too much to ask of a customer. But the question really that we were kind of pondering was really, how many of the people in your audience do you really know? And I've got a nice kind of animation here that kind of talks this through a little bit. So you've got your lead booker who might book 4 tickets. You've got who those 4 tickets go to. And in the middle, you've kind of got a bit of a black box. You don't really know who they are. And really what happens if we delve into that box and kind of unpack that a bit and kind of try to understand who those people are. And if we do that, we really can, using this sort of shadow tickets approach, then we can really kind of understand a bit better about who your full audience is, as opposed to who just your lead booker is. So I am quite a visual person, so I put this together in a scenario, and I thought it would be useful to demonstrate this point. So this is the scenario that Kirk, Ben, and I go to cultural activities regularly. So in this scenario, Kirk is the known booker, and he's bought Ben and I and himself tickets for the theatre on Friday, because he's very generous like that. So that would make Ben and I the shadow audiences in that transaction. Then next month, it's Ben's turn, and he's going to buy tickets for a concert for Kirk and I. And so that means Ben is the known booker there, and Kirk and I are both shadow audiences. Then we're booking in advance for a musical at Christmas. I don't like musicals, apparently, according to this, this example. So Ben is just going to go with Kirk. Ben, in this case, is the known booker, and Kirk, again, is the shadow booker. So according to your database, therefore, you would have the information that Kirk has attended theatre once, that Ben is a frequent attendee, he goes to concerts and musicals, and that I've never been to you. And that's what your CRM is kind of telling you at the moment about what our behaviour is. If we sort of reveal the full picture, if we all consented to share our information, then actually what you now see is quite a different picture. You can see that Kirk and Ben are both highly engaged across all the art forms that are on offer, and that I've gone from somebody that's never been to actually somebody that's really quite a frequent attendee and crosses over between theatre and music. So you can see really the power of how this practice can really unlock information about your audiences, and not just for marketing, but also actually potentially for donations as well. If you think actually you've gone from knowing somebody's a oncer to knowing somebody's really frequently engaged, then that increases their potential for donation as well, or for a donation ask. And so with my kind of, real world examples, anecdotal kind of hat on, I was thinking this through and thinking really kind of a lot of our objectives are around kind of finding new audiences, aren't they? But so often those new audiences aren't necessarily going to be the person making that booking. I had an example where I went in quite a big group to a classical music concert, and I booked, I think, for all of us. And my friend, who'd never been to anything like that, came out and said, I enjoyed that more than I thought I would. And I didn't think I'd enjoy it at all, which my husband and I often talk about as a funny example of a slightly backhanded compliment. But still, he was a new person who'd come and been welcomed into that space. And I suppose I had kind of been the ambassador to bring that person in. So you can then understand who your new people are a little bit better. You can also cultivate a relationship with a non-lead booker. So that kind of classic example of, Mary gets the emails, I just go along. I didn't know you also did X, Y, Z. And And also you can kind of fill in a bit of a partial picture of that audience demographic and really try and understand who your audience is. So, you know, that example, I've been speaking to somebody recently sort of saying, you know, our post-visit surveys say one thing, but looking around the hall, I can tell that we've had some movement in our demographics. You know, I can tell we've got younger people coming in. I can tell we've got a slightly different audience than a year ago. And obviously, you know, this doesn't necessarily mean your post-visit surveys are going to get filled in more numbers, but it does give you a greater pool to go and ask people. And so on that note, I've got a Slido here that you can take part in. So the question would be, at this point, what do you think about using digital ticketing to reveal shadow audiences? And I think you can, just seen Andrew do it, take a picture with your phone of the QR code and then just vote like that. 100% for it. Thanks, Andrew. I'm guessing that was you. Yeah, we'll kind of leave that running. And on that note, I will pass over to Kirk.
Excellent. Thank you, Libby. Yeah, I'm going to let it run for a little bit, just make sure everybody can get in. You can also go to slido.com and type in that number 3679836 to participate. Going to see if we get any other participants here. Everybody's for it. We have 6 participants now. Oh, not sure. There we go. Excellent. I'm going to leave it running and we'll look at it at the end and we'll see how people's opinions have changed at the end here. So let me go ahead and advance the slide. So thank you, Libby. Thank you, Ben, for introducing how we all came together for this in the first place and for clarifying the whole concept of shadow audiences for us here. You know, I'm Kirk Mortensen, as I said, head of product at TrueTickets. I get to do the data bit of this presentation. I also like peppering my data with stories, so you're going to get a bit of that too. And as I get started, I want to do a quick intro of TrueTickets and then move on. So TrueTickets is a secure digital ticket delivery service. We plug into Tessitore currently with 86 clients, 3 of them in the UK, more coming. And we're working to integrate with other ticketing systems in the near future. A big part of the value that our service offers is in revealing shadow audience members through digital ticketing, through digital ticket sharing. But this presentation is not about TrueTickets. It's a discussion about the pros and cons of using digital tickets to reveal your shadow audiences. So the data that I'm going to show you today is focused on beginning to answer some key questions about how that has worked for our clients. So the first question that we have up here is perhaps obvious after everything Ben and Libby have shared, but why can it be useful to reveal your shadow audience? And I think it would be helpful to just get specific about some of the very real and quite impactful opportunities that come from knowing more of your actual audience. So on this slide, I'm going to split these opportunities into 2 sets. On the left, those benefiting your customers, your guests, your visitors, your patrons, and on the right, opportunities benefiting your organizations. So naturally, you can only communicate with the members of your audience that you have contact information for. So most of the opportunities for customers come back in one way or another to the ways that you can communicate with revealed shadow audience members in order to enhance their experience. So when you have their contact information, you can more effectively welcome them into your venues. So for example, simply including more of the audience in those know before you go emails helps you orient them so they can know what to expect and feel more at home when they arrive. On a related note, understanding who a current ticket holder is and how they got that ticket allows for your teams to be more effective when they need to address customer service issues. Our friends at Ballet Austin had a situation where a ticket scalper had sold a patron tickets to the ballet along with what they claimed was a valet parking pass. And when the patron got their pass and realized it was for self-parking 5 blocks away from the venue, they were mad enough to post about it on social media. Now, under normal circumstances, this person would have been a shadow audience member and the ballet wouldn't have been able to do much. But since they had a record of the ballet tickets being transferred to the patron, they were able to reach out. And while they couldn't fix the parking issue, they could explain what had happened, upgrade her seats, and get her access to the donor lounge. Now, she was thrilled with this service, and she learned a valuable lesson about transacting directly with the ballet in the future. Knowing who these attendees are also helps you surface relevant opportunities to enhance their experience. The Dr. Phillips Center in Orlando, Florida had a series of showings of the Lord of the Rings movies with a live orchestra. And when the second movie got scheduled, there was no time to put out any marketing before the first movie went up. But they were able to add a message on the tickets to the first movie, which offered access to an exclusive pre-sale for the second movie. The bonus for this technique was that they not only got the message in front of their bookers, they also got the message in front of the revealed shadow audience members who had accepted shared tickets. And they sold nearly $100,000 worth of tickets with this technique with zero marketing spend. The next idea is one that I really love. When your loyalty schemes only account for the booker of the tickets, you're missing whole swaths of your audience who may well consider themselves to be very loyal to your organization. An old story from the Arsh Center in Miami illustrates this missed opportunity perfectly. They had a subscriber show up at the box office asking for some help. They tried to look her up, and they couldn't find her or her tickets in the database no matter what they did. This patron was obviously getting a little upset and claimed she'd been subscribing for years. And finally, they all realized that she had been going with a friend who had booked the subscription tickets. She thought she had a loyal relationship with the center, but unfortunately, they were years behind in trying to develop that relationship because they simply didn't know who she was. Now, on the other side of the slide here, on the side of opportunities benefiting your organizations, more people you can send surveys to likely means you'll get some more survey responses and a more holistic understanding of your audience. I love the story Lisa Middleton from the Segerstrom Center in Costa Mesa, California told me once. After they implemented ticket sharing, she went to an event with her husband. He hadn't previously been in the database, but she shared his ticket with him and he accepted it, which created a new customer record in the process. They had a great time at the show, but the real fun for Lisa was the next morning. As they were getting ready for the day, her husband looked at his phone and he said, "Oh, I got an email from Segerstrom." And she knowingly replied, "Oh, really? What does it say?" "Well, I hope they hope I enjoyed the show last night, and they asked me to fill out a survey and suggest some other shows I might like." So when Lisa told me the story, she was so excited, right? That she literally shouted at me, "Kirk, it works!" Right? Being able to communicate with those revealed shadow audience members is a game changer. That of course leads into gathering more insights from the survey data, yes, but also from the behavioral data that you can track as people share tickets with each other. I think that as an industry, and sort of as Libby referenced earlier, we've been kind of flummoxed by the idea that so many of our bookers seem to be coming only once or once per year as far as our databases are concerned, when they often tell us that they come frequently. Many of our clients are uncovering patterns of customers who are sometimes bookers and sometimes guests of other bookers, not to mention the opportunity to better understand social networks amongst your attendees. And of course, being able to market to these revealed shadow audience members can lead to revenue opportunities, both in terms of return ticket purchases and in terms of donations. The Kauffman Center in Kansas City has a great story here. A gentleman came to a show as a revealed shadow audience member. They suspect that he bought his tickets from a reseller, but they had his name and his email address in the system, so they started following up. And a few months later, he responded to an appeal and purchased tickets to a subscription series. He bought more single tickets as the months progressed and shared them with other people, and then they sent him a donation appeal. They suggested a $25 donation to start. Well, he signed up for over $1,000 right from the get-go. And to think that they might not have ever known who this man was. Okay, so stories are nice, Kirk, but you promised us data. Yes, I did indeed promise you data, so let's get to that. At the start of 2025, we worked with our friends at JCA in the US to gather data from 31 True Tickets clients. This included 3 full calendar years, 5.4 million constituents, and 32 million tickets. So with this data, we were able to explore the answers to a number of key questions about revealing shadow audiences. First question, how big is the shadow audience? So what we found is that the known audience, or the bookers, account for about 35% of tickets, and the remaining 65% of tickets are shadow audiences. This is likely not surprising, right? Bookers purchase between 2 and 3 tickets on average. We also looked at the percent of shadow audience members in the audience by organization type. They were all about the same, but Opera in our data set has a higher share of known audiences than other organization types. Next question, how many shadow audience members are being revealed? So in terms of just raw numbers of revealed shadow audience members for the organizations that participated in this study, it goes up each year. Do note here that 2022 represents only a partial year of activity. Ticket sharing was released by True Tickets in August of 2022. Another way of looking at the numbers of revealed shadow audiences is as a proportion of the total audience, measured by the number of tickets purchased. So of the overall shadow audience across the data set, there's a clear increase in the percentage that has been revealed in each year, from 8% in 2022 to 13% in 2024. So I know that I'm an American here, and there are a whole bunch of people from UK, all of the other people here presenting. But I hear that there's this thing called data privacy or something kind of like that. I don't know if you've heard of it. No, so for real, I do know about data privacy. I know how important it is for any organization operating in the UK and Canada and Australia and even some jurisdictions in the US. Any of those organizations that's looking to market to revealed shadow audience members, this opt-in question really does matter. Do these revealed shadow audience members opt in to marketing? So I'm going to cover this specifically with a report from the Roundhouse in London, which has been using True Tickets since 2022. So for new customers that come to them through standard acquisition channels, primarily sales, their opt-in rate is about 19%. For new customers who are registering with the organization in order to accept shared tickets, the opt-in rate is 24%. Now, what I love about this number is that it signals an increased openness to the Roundhouse for this particular segment of the audience. There is greater interest there in developing a relationship with the venue. And for our last question, let's get to the heart of the opportunity that exists for event organizers, for you all. When we market to them, do these revealed shadow audience members come back? So our clients have been using ticket sharing through True Tickets to reveal shadow audience members since August of 2022. So let's start by focusing on what happened in calendar year 2024. And let me note, as I'm showing you numbers here, I'm showing these in dollars because the majority of the participants in the study are using dollars. My apologies to anybody who is not using dollars here in the room. But of all of those revealed shadow audience members since August of 2022, 10.6% of them came back to purchase tickets in 2024, generating $3.9 million in ticketing revenue, which averages to $125,000 per organization in 2024 alone. If we consider all revenues from August 2022 through December 2024, our clients saw a total of $6.5 million in ticket sales from revealed shadow audience members and $288,000 in contributed revenue, which comes to a grand total of $6.8 million in total revenue from revealed shadow audience members. So obviously those numbers are pretty exciting for me. It's really thrilling to be able to positively impact our clients, both in terms of the relationships that they are building with members of their community, but also in terms of their financial bottom lines. So that is the data that I have to share with you today. I'm going to go ahead and hand things back over to Andrew so that we can dig in on these and some other questions together.
Thank you very much, Kirk. It's great to actually see this presentation because I was one of the first people to respond to Ollie's comment online, which then blew up into those 43 comments, and then you and I spoke about putting this together as a session for TPC, which I don't get to see the sessions, so it's really great to be able to sit on today and to be able to run this Q&A. People online, if you have got a question, get into the Q&A. I can see them coming in already. But as regulars on our webinars know, I love to say I organise these, so I get to ask my questions first. So I'll kick off, and I've got a couple of questions here that I want to throw over. And to start off with, Kirk, both you and I and others on the panel and as attendees have used multiple CRMs or have worked for CRM providers. This shadow audience concept, or names on the seat, whatever you want to call it, is dependent, isn't it, on the CRM system having the ability to understand how a booking is made up. Now, I know Tessitura does this. I know, I think Audience View, Patron Base, I think Tixley may do it as well. You know, is there, what's your feeling as from True Tickets kind of view of the general wish for the leading CRM providers to start, you know, supporting this functionality? Is the needle moving, or is it still just those kind of leading systems that are adopting it?
Yeah, I think the needle is moving. I think that organizations are talking about wanting to know more about their shadow audiences, wanting to be able to connect to them, but of course they don't want to break the connection in their CRM system with the purchaser and what the booker and what tickets they actually booked, what they paid for. And that's where it's really valuable to be able to create this direct connection between a specific, you know, guest of the booker and the ticket that they're using. I think there are some ways to still get shadow audience data into a database, even when that connection doesn't exist or isn't available in that particular system. But it's limited, right? Because you sort of have to be more general about, oh, they had tickets to this show or this particular genre, but you don't know specifically, you know, what were their seats or what were, you know, what night did they see the show, that sort of thing, or who did they come with?
Okay, thank you for that. Questions are coming in. I'm going to go to the first one now. If you have got a question, comment, please do pop in that Q&A and I'll come to that. So the first question, I think we go around the room on this one. It comes in from Daniel Lennox. Hello, Daniel. For individual, so his comment is, for individual attendees to share their data, the why needs to be compelling. What do you see as the biggest benefit to encourage these shadow attendees to step into the light? Libby, I'll kick off with you. What do you think is the compelling reason we give to people?
I think in terms of compelling reason, I think it's about trying to wrap it up in your experience, right? So the experience you're gonna receive. So we've all been there where, you know, we're the first to get to the box office, we're the ones who got the ticket. Oh my gosh, my husband's running late. I'm going to go in, he's going to have a meltdown if he doesn't have a ticket. What do we do now? So actually it's helpful for me to pass it on to him as well, so that he has access and has his own autonomy in getting to the venue on time. But also, you know, there's opportunities for, you know, right, someone else has paid for the ticket, but maybe if you've got your name and account to the setup, maybe you can, there might be some kind of way that you can pay for drinks vouchers or get your program sorted in advance in order to kind of even things out. So I think it's like, actually, how can we bump up your experience on the day and make sure that is something that both or every party on the booking is a part of, would be my take on it.
Ben, what's your big compelling reason you think that we could give to these members to share the data? He's on mute again. He's on mute. Yeah.
Thought I pressed it, but I hadn't. Trying to be a good panelist. I think there's two parts. I think when someone books a ticket, obviously you've only got a relationship at that point with them. Everyone else is still a shadow, so they have to be convinced to share it. That's the first part. And then whatever that share is, the other person has to be convinced to accept it, which is probably easier because that request is likely to come from someone they know who's just bought them a ticket. Why wouldn't you accept it? But I think there's ways you can make both bits of that easier. And I think, you know, Libby was there. It's if you book for 4 people, you don't want to be the one hanging out in the foyer waiting to hand the ticket over to everyone else. So it just makes it easier on the day for everyone to get them. And I think other technological advancements like the ability to add it to your Apple Wallet. I don't leave the house with anything other than a phone now. You can use your phone to open your car, phone to pay for your drinks. So having everything in your one place makes it easier for those people who adopt that. So I think that's the key, is getting the person who booked to share and how their life is easier. And I think Libby picked the two that would work, certainly for me. One, it makes your life easier. You're not waiting for people. Other people aren't hassling you about what time does it start again, because they've got that information. And B, given that you've been nice and organised the whole thing, presumably one of these people will buy you a drink at the interval if
Who doesn't love a free drink at the interval? Kirk, I mean, you obviously deal with a lot of, the teams that you work with deal a lot with kind of the implementation. Is there any wording that venues are playing with to kind of promote or provoke a greater response?
Yeah, we've had a few clients who have done some things just to encourage people to share their tickets, and honestly, it doesn't take a lot. I will say that I think there is already an expectation amongst audiences to have this kind of ability. As evidence, I'll cite that when we released this functionality, some organizations turned it on without telling their customers anything, and customers started sharing tickets and providing their data, and it was very easy and very smooth and very intuitive. And so, there is something out there where people just want to do this. I know that when I go to a show, if I'm going with friends, I would rather have my tickets in my hand or on my phone. The organizations that we've seen try to encourage more ticket sharing have done very simple things, like just reminding people in a know before you go email, oh, don't forget you can share your ticket, or including that in the order confirmation email or things like that. And they see a significant uptick in ticket sharing activity.
That's great. Thank you. And thank you for that question, Daniel. Other people, if you want to get your questions in, please do use the Q&A. I'm going to have to go to my phone because people love sometimes just texting their questions to me rather than using the inbuilt functionality that we paid for. So bear with me while I dive into my phone. But please do use the Q&A functionality while I try and decipher this one. So this is about false positives, and I think Libby's example of where she's buying tickets for a concert, and she appear, or one of you appear as a shadow audience member. This question says, is there a risk of us having a false positive of sending you an email saying thank you for your first visit, when all the time you've been coming for 10 years, being like Kirk, your example of being bought by a ticket by someone else? Do we need to be careful that we're not, if we reveal shadow audience members, that we don't suddenly take this as being factual? Libby, Ben, again, you deal with audience data a lot. Are there risks here with this, and how can we maybe mitigate it, or what can we do to use the data and be personal without kind of saying thanks for your first visit?
I mean, I'm always slightly nervous of doing anything around kind of thanks for your first visit. Even if you don't have shadow audiences, because you don't know. You're more likely to know if you do have shadow audiences once you've got it going for a while that somebody is genuinely a new audience member. But realistically, right now, most of us are flying blind on that. Having done a lot of research, both in terms of data analysis of box office data, but also market research, hand in hand, you can see the differences in market research to behaviour that you actually see tracked in your box office. The way people self-report, well, I go X amount of times a year to your venue, and actually in the data maybe they've gone once. So I think whenever we're doing anything like that, really, I think if we're ever doing offers or kind of communications that are that explicit, we do have to be a little bit careful. And so I think it is maybe just kind of thinking through, you might want to treat somebody like it's their first time, without being as explicit as that, and to go from there. But that would be my thought, is that you have to treat it with a pinch of salt. Anyway, Ben, what do you think?
I think these two questions are interesting in that this is a new era. You were talking about you only know 35% of your audience at the minute, and we did a similar piece of research looking at changes to group size over time, and particularly through COVID. And part of that, it was the same. 36% is what you know. So there's all these people out there, and there's thinking this through is an opportunity to expand that to somewhere closer to 100%. But there's lots of mini questions in the middle of that about those relationships. So at the moment, the person who booked the ticket can send the ticket, and then they've got the ticket. You've got that ticket logged against them in the system now, so it's all smooth. But it could be weird if their first email is a donation email. So I think it adds a level of complexity to that customer journey planning, particularly if this person, so I used to work in a number of theatres, and at one of them we had exactly this problem. We had a subscription audience who were very, incredible. They came to 8 shows a year. They spend a lot of money. They've been doing it for 25 years, 30 years, some of them. But again, about half of those, we didn't know who they were because one person was buying them and sending them on. And they quite jealously guarded that relationship. They were the convener for this group. So you don't want to break that down. So I think it is important for you to think through what that customer journey is. For the person you're talking to for the first time, they may be a long time listener, first time call. They may be appearing in your database for the first time. How can you make that as positive experience as possible for them? And it will be different if you're perhaps with subscribers than or across different genres and things like that. So I think it's a really useful question that people ask. Their first thought is, how do we manage this? What's the right language to make this a positive experience, rather than why is someone I've never heard from before suddenly, how have they got my email address? Those sort of worries that come through.
And I think to that point, Ben, I think you get into sort of the consumer psychology of, in a given transaction, why is the person doing the purchasing? Have they done the research as well? Are they the one that's passionate about this and they're bringing someone along, or did what is it that's made them be the person to pull the trigger on the ticket as opposed to the other person? And probably there's a variety of reasons why one person is the organizer and the other person isn't. It might just be simply down to one person has a credit card and the other one only has a debit card, for example, or the other one person's better on using websites than the other. Certainly, I end up having to book tickets for my parents a lot of the time. So I think there are kind of group dynamics to consider. And I wonder, Kirk, if it's possible to kind of, can you split it out so that you can tag, who is the booker and who is the sort of shadow? I suppose you probably could.
Yeah, I mean, depending on how the data is recorded in the given database system, yeah, absolutely, you can tell the difference between the booker and the guest that is attending. And it's been interesting to have some conversations with clients who want to treat those two parties differently. I think most of our clients who we're reporting data on here and have seen significant revenue are just treating the revealed shadow audience members as if they were bookers in terms of how they remarket to them later, just looping them into those segments. But there are some organizations beginning to think about, how could we segment the revealed shadow audience members separately, because we should think about them really as leads. They've never actually made a purchase as far as our database is concerned.
That's fascinating. Holly, I want to come to you. Sorry, Ben.
I was just going to ask, if you were talking, Libby, about a situation there where you buy, and I'm the same, I buy the tickets this week and my wife buys the tickets next week. So your shadow audience are each other. And presumably that if I share a ticket with someone and they're already in the database, it will find them. Or will you end up creating duplicates in your database from shadow bookers?
We do everything we can to avoid creating duplicates in our system, and I think most systems would. Obviously, as we all know, you can't avoid creating duplicates 100% of the time.
Thanks for that. I've got Holly. I'll come to your question next. But I've got to follow up on this one, which is, in the examples we gave, it was a very generic 3 or 4 person group. And Kirk, I'll start off with you. Do you have examples of where what we call, a traditional kind of coach group in the UK of 50 people coming from a social club to the theatre? Are any of the kind of organisations using that to find out who those 49 people are sat on the bus? Because it's diminished since COVID a lot, group bookers, this traditional coach model in the UK. But are there like large scale groups using this, or is it more that kind of 2 couples, 3 or 4 people? Is that what's that look like? And then I'd be interested to hear from Libby and Ben on their thoughts whether it would solve some of those bigger group booking data.
Yeah, so we certainly do see larger groups using it. I think the majority of cases where sharing is happening is smaller groups, but that's really a reflection of the numbers of smaller groups versus larger groups that exist as bookers to begin with. the case that is coming to mind for me is actually not about a bus of people all going together, but is about an organization of ours that rents out their space for galas for other nonprofit organizations, fundraising galas. And the organizations that they rent to were really excited about using this functionality in order to find out who the guests of table buyers were going to be. And so they would, the venue, the renter, would have their 100, 200 tickets to the gala, and they would take 10 of those tickets and share them with the table buyer, and then encourage the table buyer to share the tickets with each of the people who were joining them at the table. And it was a wonderful way for them to find that information, and much easier than the techniques that they'd used previously, right? Trying to catch up with and get their table buyers to respond and things like that. So I think it does get used. I actually have a meeting on the books to talk to an organization, the group bookings person at an organization later this week about, what could we do to help make that process easier for group organizers.
Fascinating. Lily, Ben, thoughts on it, on the kind of coach booking model? Do you think that would get traction, or that would benefit us? Or is it really those kind of two couples, family groups that you think there's a benefit?
I mean,
you go first, Lily.
Sorry, Ben, with my, I mean, just my fear would be that, I suppose, people using that kind of channel to book tickets, you're sort of doing it for that sense of somebody else is dealing with it for me. I'm going to come along and I don't have to do this bit, or they know best, so I'm going to follow. And so I can imagine a world in which there wouldn't be a huge amount of traction, even if that would be quite helpful for us to be able to fill in more of a picture, particularly with those more sort of tourism-based kind of events or attractions. And as Ben said, I've worked with sort of smaller groups and more informal kind of U3A type groups, that kind of thing. And that sense of pride and ownership of those groups being jealously guarded is something I definitely recognise. Yes, I can imagine that the notepad and pen approach for that, it would continue regardless. But it could well change. That would be my sense.
I mean, my guess would be that the coach trips are less likely to do it, share everyone on the coach, because the way that works is you sort of herd your group in out of venues, but it may be different in different organizations. We did a as part of our so at the Audience Agency we collect data from lots of organizations, and we do some work looking at patterns across that, and we also run the cultural population monitor, which is sort of 5 ways of surveys we do every year to find out how people engage, and we share those in sessions. So we did a tea break where we talk about this evidence and audiences recently about who people attend with. So I think most of these people aren't in those big groups. When people talk about groups, they think about the coach booker, and but across, we looked at 255 UK venues, and I think most of those 38% of people are buying 2 tickets, 12%. This is the share of all sales was 12% for 3, 13% groups of 4, 4% groups of 5, 12 plus was 15%. So a chunk, 1 in 7 audience members, and not all those were necessarily group tips. And I think we identified 3 groups in that sort of schools, organized groups, and then what we're kind of focusing on here in some of our introductions, which is people booking for a bunch of friends or a regular group of bookers. And I think those are the ones who are most likely to benefit from this and get involved, and who we are most likely to benefit from as organizations, because they're people who are likely to return once we have developed that relationship. I mean, I won't go into more. There's lots of details in terms of that research into UK audiences about who people attend with and how that's changed pre and post pandemic. One of the upsetting findings about that from this perspective is that a lot of those groups have got smaller over between 2019 and now. And I think while most of them have recovered, and that sort of the social engine of inviting people to come with you to cultural events has recovered by and large, it's recovered slowest for those larger groups of 12 plus, even if you strip out school bookings, which has been affected by a series of other things. Anyway, that's a separate bit of research, so I'm happy to ping a link to that YouTube in the chat. That's all right, Andrew. People can look at that.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot for that. Last question then, unless someone wants to sneak one in, it's from Holly. And Holly asks, what are the panel's thoughts on incentivizing shadow attendees to share their data and increase take-up? Do you have a view on whether this might harm support future sales? So again, you know, we're making a case, but should we be giving you 10% off? Should we be doing something else to incentivize that data share? So Kirk, if we start with you, because obviously you've had experience with dealing with people, and then maybe ping to Ben and to Libby to round off the questions.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really interesting question. I am not aware of any of our clients using an incentive like 10% off to encourage people to provide their data through ticket sharing. So I haven't heard of that happening. And organizations are getting, you know, quite a few names just from people wanting to share their tickets without any special benefits. Yeah, so I'll go there, and then I'll stop there and defer to Libby and Ben on their thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, my thought would be to lean away from doing that and kind of hold your incentives for other purposes. I think partly because I think, you know, we don't know yet whether knowing your shadow audiences is truly changing behavior yet. So you don't know if you're getting, like, how much of your additional sales would have happened anyway, or how much of it would have happened because they're on your database. It's sort of, that's a bit of an unknown, and so you wouldn't want to lose income based on that. So but also I do think, as Kurt kind of mentioned, I think there's something in just having your ticketing process be what it is, and people will just follow the steps, and it is just the thing that you do. In the same way you put in your address, you might well then put in your you know, your companion's name and email address. I did really like that when Kirk mentioned that actually you can do that at a later date, and actually suggesting that they do it in a pre-performance email, because one of my concerns in advance was of doing this work was sort of worrying about people who kind of bought 2 tickets or bought 10 tickets, and they, you know, don't know who's coming yet, and actually it would be a real headache to confirm at this point. But actually being able to do it the day before feels much more realistic and tangible and part of the preparation process. And actually that might just get them at that moment where they're thinking, well, actually I'm going to get there 5 minutes late, so why don't you get your ticket now? So I think that to me feels like more of something that would turn the dial in a way that isn't going to have a financial implication for the business.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. Kirk, I'm going to hand it back to you. I think we've got a few more slides to finish up, and then we'll wrap this up on time, hopefully.
Yeah, great. Okay, so we've had the whole discussion about shadow audiences and using digital ticketing to reveal shadow audiences. So now we're interested in whether opinions have changed. You know, who's for it, who's against it, who's not sure after we've discussed. And we'll give folks a few minutes here to respond before we do a little comparison.
Well, I voted.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. It's all right. Maybe we don't have many. I'm going to give it just a few more seconds here. Okay. Well, I'm pleased to report. Oh, there's 2 responses. Excellent. 3 responses, all 100% for. Here we go. Now they're coming.
Well, I think it was 83% for it before, so we shifted the. Oh,
that's good. So this is, so no, sorry, I shifted to number 1. So this is what number 1 was, 83%, and not sure 17%, and we've shifted nearly all the people who are responding again are well, all of them are 100%. Yep, up to 6 now. That's excellent. From my perspective, at least. So I do think shadow audiences and revealing shadow audiences has a significant potential to have a positive impact for organizations. And it's just about finding the right ways to do it in your context and with your customers. So excellent. Well then, thank you very much, everybody. I don't know, Andrew, if you have any closing words here.
No, thank you everyone for attending. We are going to share this. It'll be available on demand on the website within the next hour or so. So if you have missed anything, you want to go back and check any figures, and we'll include on that page some contact details for Kirk, Libby, and I think Ben shared a resource there as well with a example. If you scan the QR code on the screen, and we're QR coded out today, but that'll take you to some links for TPC 2026 and 2025.5 that we've just launched recently. And of course, we've got 2 more webinars, one on Thursday this week and one next Tuesday before we wrap up this season. So just thank Kirk, Libby, thank you very much. Ben, a special thanks to you for stepping in for Ollie at the last minute. And thank you all for attending, and have a good rest of your day wherever you are.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.